Joining us from Capitol Hill this morning, Congresswoman Emily Randall, Democrat of Washington State, serves as a member of the Oversight and Government Reform Committee as well as on the Natural Resources Committee. Congresswoman, let's begin with that first committee assignment, Oversight and Government Reform. This is the committee that has been overseeing the investigation into the Epstein files. You voted for the release of those files. President Trump has signed it into law. Calls on the Justice Department to release the files within 30 days. What do you expect to happen next?
Well, the one thing that you didn't mention was that the President and the Justice Department have also opened a new investigation, which, per the language in the Massey-Kana bill that was just signed, allows some redaction and withholding of documents that are related and that are in the Epstein files. Importantly, the subpoena that was issued by the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform, spearheaded by Summer Lee, doesn't include that same language. So the Justice Department and the Trump administration are obligated to release the full set of files to the committee. Now, they have been since we issued that subpoena, and they have not released the full set of files. So they are in violation of the subpoena that Chair Comer is not enforcing currently. So I guess I'll say we're taking a few steps forward, but it doesn't yet feel like the Trump administration is participating and fulfilling the requirements of the subpoena and this bill in the way that they're meant to.
You referenced Republican James Comer, the chair of the Oversight Committee. Walk our viewers through the investigation thus far by the panel. What has been happening?
So, Representative Summer Lee, a Democrat on the committee, introduced a subpoena in the subcommittee on law enforcement right before the government shutdown. After we had voted on the continuing resolution, when Republicans many of them had gone home. They had the votes in that subcommittee to pass her subpoena. I think it came as a surprise to the Republicans on the committee, and so we have begun to see a release of files. The first release of files from the Justice Department were files that had already been disclosed to the public. We've seen subsequent releases of files from the Epstein estate of previously unseen information, but the Justice Department does owe the committee further files that they have not yet released.
Up until the Congresswoman's subpoena, what had the committee done and seen of the Epstein files?
During this Congress, I was sworn in January. It hadn't been a big subject of the committee, bipartisan committee investigation. I will say the Democrats had been pushing, and the majority of the Republicans were not interested in engaging.
What documents have you been able to see, and how, as a member of Congress on this committee, do you go about reading? I imagine it's thousands of pages.
Yes. There's it's a significant tranche of documents that we receive at a time. The committee staff begins the review, and I'll point out that Republican staff and Democratic staff are allowed access to it, as are members, but the Republicans have double the number of staff as Democrats do because they're in the majority. So our staff is working diligently and overtime to ensure that they read through all the documents, each one piece by piece. And because Democrats made this promise to the survivors, we are redacting information before we release to the public. The Republicans haven't done the same thing. They have been releasing completely unredacted documents, but it was a promise that we made to the survivors at their request that we redact particular names before releasing files. Now, because of a courier tool, most of these documents are also available to the public, since the Republicans released from the committee, released them all to the public. But they didn't do that until the Democrats released 3 emails at the beginning of the week.
And those emails were about the president?
Yes, those emails included references to President Trump, references to him being on the plane, references to him not yet disclosing information about Jeffrey Epstein's activities, emails between Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. It opened the floodgates, and at that point, President Trump had been bringing in Republican members who had signed the discharge petition to release all the documents to the public. He had been bringing them into the White House, Lauren Boebert, other women, Nancy Mace, Marjorie Taylor Greene, to try and pressure them to remove their names from the discharge petition before Adelita Grijalva was sworn in and signed the discharge petition to allow this full release of the files. At that point, the president changed his tune. He said, he told the Republicans to vote for it. He told the Republicans to release it. I think the writing was on the wall that the public would no longer be behind him in withholding this information from the public. So now it's our job to make sure that the DOJ complies with our subpoena in the committee and complies with the language in this bill, a bipartisan, unanimous bill, to release all the files to the public.
When did Democrats discover those 3 emails that reference President Trump?
So we had gotten the release of a huge document dump like 3 or 4 days before those 3 emails were released. I don't know if it was that morning or the day before that those documents were uncovered, but within those 4 days.
And what was the strategy behind releasing those 3 specific emails and not emails about Democrats, Larry Summers, for example, or others?
Yeah, I think the strategy was to inspire the Republicans to release all of the documents and to change their tune and to ensure that we were able to get the support of the entire chamber but one member to fully release these files. The Republicans didn't release information before that. They were withholding the information. I'd say the subpoena language only required the documents to be released to the committee. And without Democrats taking the first step, I don't know that we would have seen this same release and the same change of tune from the White House.